She's not dead. Woman interrupts funeral of mob boss's mother. Then a miracle happens. Watch until the end. Comment with what you thought of this story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10. I really want to know if you liked my story and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The fine October rain beat against the colorful stained glass windows of St. Patrick's Cathedral, creating a mosaic of light and shadow that danced across the mourners' faces. Leo Castellano adjusted the knot of his black tie for the third time in 15 minutes, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood that now, at 45, still betrayed him in moments of greatest tension. Before him, the polished mahogany casket held the body of Donna Elena Castellano, the woman who for nearly 7 decades had ruled with an iron fist not just the family, but a silent empire that stretched across all of New York City. The respectful silence that hung over the cathedral was broken only by the occasional murmur of condolences and the muffled sound of restrained sobs. Hundreds of people squeezed into the wooden pews, a strange mix of businessmen in Italian suits, politicians with rehearsed smiles, and shadowy figures who preferred to remain in the back rows. Everyone there knew they weren't just paying homage to an elderly matriarch, but saying goodbye to an era. Leo watched each face, mentally cataloguing who had shown up and who had preferred to send only flowers. In the politics of the family business, presence was loyalty, and absence, a dangerous declaration. His dark eyes, which had intimidated judges, commissioners, and men much older than him, seemed vulnerable today, almost fragile. The pain of loss mixed with the anxiety of command, because Leo knew that everyone present was assessing his ability to fill the void left by his mother. He had grown up knowing this moment would one day come, but Donna Eleanor had always seemed immortal in his eyes. At 82, she still received visitors in her private study every morning, signed checks for astronomical sums with her usual elegance, and made decisions that affected the lives of hundreds of families. Her death, apparently peaceful in her sleep the night before, had left Leo not just an orphan, but lost. The priest continued the ceremony with appropriate solemnity, his voice echoing through the Gothic naves as he recited passages about eternal life and divine mercy. Leo tried to pay attention, but his thoughts drifted between childhood memories and the responsibilities that awaited him. There would be endless meetings with the family lawyers, a review of ongoing contracts, delicate negotiations with partners just waiting for a sign of weakness to try and renegotiate terms. It was then that the heavy oak doors of the cathedral swung open with a bang that made hundreds of heads turn simultaneously. The echo reverberated off the stone walls, breaking the sacred protocol of the moment. A young woman walked with determination down the central aisle, her firm steps echoing against the polished marble. She wore a simple black dress, nothing that stood out for its elegance or price, but there was something in her posture that cut through the air like a blade. Chloe Miller was 24 and had never set foot in such an imposing cathedral. The daughter of Sarah Miller, who for 15 years had cleaned the crystal chandeliers in the Castellano mansion on the Upper East Side. She had grown up hearing stories about the family that lived like American royalty. Her mother would come home every night with tales of dinners that cost more than her annual salary, of clothes left on chairs that were worth a used sedan, of the polite coldness with which she was treated by her employers. When Sarah died in a work accident that was never properly investigated, a mysterious fall from the service staircase of the mansion, Chloe promised herself that one day she would understand how that world worked. Raised by her grandmother in a tiny apartment in the Bronx, she dedicated herself to her studies with an intensity that impressed her teachers and worried her neighbors. She managed to get a full scholarship to Columbia University for medicine, specializing in forensic pathology, driven by an obsessive desire to seek truths that others preferred to bury. Now walking towards the casket where Donna Elena rested, Chloe carried a folder of documents and a courage that defied all logic. She had spent the entire night analyzing photos a contact at the OCME had managed to get for her, comparing them with similar cases she had studied in college. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was pure adrenaline coursing through her veins. Leo watched her approach, initially annoyed by the interruption, but gradually intrigued. There was something familiar about this young woman, a determination he recognized in himself. His security guards had already moved discreetly, waiting only for a gesture from him to intercept the intruder, but he raised his hand almost imperceptibly, signaling for them to wait. When Chloe stopped before the casket, the silence in the cathedral became absolute. Even the small children seemed to feel the tension hanging in the air. She opened the folder, took out some photographs, and with a clear voice that cut through the silence like a shout said, "She's not dead." The words provoked an immediate reaction. Indignant murmurs spread through the pews. Some attendees stood up instinctively, and Leo felt the blood rush to his head. His right hand moved by reflex towards the gun, hidden under his jacket, a movement so automatic that he only realized it as he was doing it. "How dare you?" His Uncle Anthony's voice cut through the air, heavy with indignation and authority. "Get out of here immediately before—" "She was murdered," Chloe continued, completely ignoring the threat. Her voice gained strength as she pointed to a small reddish spot on the deceased's white garments, almost imperceptible to untrained eyes. "This mark is not natural decomposition. These are petechiae, pinpoint hemorrhages caused by asphyxiation. Your mother didn't die in her sleep, Mr. Castellano. Someone killed her." The impact of the words hit Leo like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the accusation itself, but the technical precision with which it was made. The unshakable confidence in the voice of this young woman who shouldn't even be there. He studied Chloe's face, searching for signs of madness or opportunism, but found only the cold determination of someone who knew exactly what she was saying. The cathedral erupted in discordant voices. Some demanded the young woman be removed by force. Others questioned whether she had the credentials to make such an accusation. Leo rose slowly, his imposing height gradually silencing the murmurs. When he spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but laden with an authority that made everyone fall silent instantly. "Who are you?" he asked, "and why should I believe a single word you've said?" Chloe lifted her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm Chloe Miller, a forensic medicine student at Columbia. My mother worked in your house for 15 years before she died in an accident you called a tragedy. I know how to recognize when someone is trying to hide the truth, and I know how to recognize when someone has been murdered." The tension in the air was almost palpable as Leo descended the altar steps, his footsteps echoing on the marble in a rhythmic pace, reminiscent of a death sentence. Chloe remained motionless, even as she felt the weight of hundreds of gazes on her, even when she realized that half the men present were probably carrying guns under their impeccable suits. There was something in Leo's eyes that intrigued her more than it frightened her, a mixture of pain and curiosity she hadn't expected to find. "Stop the service," Leo ordered, without taking his eyes off Chloe. His voice cut through the murmurs like a sharp blade. "Take the body to the office of the chief medical examiner. I want a full autopsy done by an independent team today." The priest tried to protest, talking about respect for the dead and religious traditions, but Leo silenced him with a single glance. Anthony Castellano, Donna Elena's older brother and one of the most respected figures in the family, approached with his face red with indignation. "Leo, have you completely lost your mind? You're going to desecrate your own mother's body because of some girl's fantasies?" His voice trembled with barely contained anger. "Donna Elena deserves to rest in peace, not be mutilated by medical examiners. If my mother was murdered, Leo replied, his voice low but filled with a coldness that made Chloe shiver. Then whoever killed her will pay, and if this young woman is lying, he turned to face her directly, then she will pay too. Chloe held his gaze, even as she felt her legs tremble slightly. I'm not lying, and I can prove it. She opened the folder again and took out more photographs, these being enlargements of detail she had requested from a colleague in her forensic medicine course. Look at her fingernails. There are skin fragments under 2 of them, a sign that she fought back. And here, she pointed to another image, almost imperceptible marks on the neck, consistent with pressure applied by fingers. Leo examined the photos with growing attention. He had spent his life learning to read signs of violence, to interpret threats, and to identify lies. What he saw in the images, combined with the technical precision of Chloe's explanations, began to form a picture that nauseated him. "How did you get these photos?" he asked, his voice more controlled now. "I have contacts at the OCME. When I heard Donna Elena had died, I asked to take a look. Something didn't add up with what her private doctor described as a natural death." Chloe hesitated for a moment before continuing. "My mother used to tell me things about your family, about how strong your mother was, how lucid, how she took her heart medication religiously but was always aware of everything. A woman like that doesn't just flicker out like a candle." The mention of Chloe's mother brought a strange expression to Leo's face. He vaguely remembered Sarah Miller, a small, quiet woman who cleaned the house with an almost invisible efficiency. He had never imagined she had a daughter, let alone a daughter who would become a potential threat or ally. "Mr. Castellano," Anthony intervened again, this time with a more conciliatory tone. "Even if there is some truth to this, it's not wise to involve outsiders in family matters. We can handle this internally." "No," Leo answered dryly. "If someone dared to kill my mother, I want to know who it was, how it was done, and why. And if I need this young woman's help to find out, then that's what I'm going to do." In the days that followed, Chloe found herself catapulted into a world that existed parallel to hers, but had always seemed unreachable. Leo had insisted she participate in the entire autopsy process, claiming her knowledge could be useful in identifying details that the official examiners might overlook due to political pressure or intimidation. The first time she got into Leo's armored Mercedes, Chloe felt as if she were crossing an invisible border. The car's interior was more luxurious than any place she had ever been. Italian leather, polished wood, a discreet but obviously expensive computer screen. Leo watched her reactions with curiosity, trying to understand what it was about this young woman that intrigued him so much. "Never been in a car like this," he said, more an observation than a question. "I never rode in any car until I got my driver's license at 21, Chloe replied, without embarrassment. "I've always used public transportation, still do." Her direct honesty was something Leo wasn't used to. In his world, people always tried to impress, lie about their origins, or pretend to be something they weren't. Chloe seemed completely comfortable with who she was, and that was both refreshing and unsettling. They arrived at the office of the chief medical examiner in the early afternoon. The grey, functional building contrasted sharply with the luxurious environments Leo usually moved through, but he followed Chloe through the corridors with the same confident posture he maintained in any situation. She greeted several employees by name, demonstrating a familiarity that spoke of countless hours spent studying there. Dr. Robert Castillo, the chief medical examiner and Chloe's mentor in her internships, received Leo with the respectful deference reserved for people whose power transcended any official protocol. The autopsy would be conducted by a mixed team, state examiners and a private pathologist hired by Leo, ensuring there would be no questions about impartiality. During the 3 hours the procedure lasted, Chloe remained beside Leo in the observation room, explaining each step in language he could understand. There was something almost intimate in those moments, the two of them united by a common goal, she lending him her expertise while he provided the resources needed to seek the truth. "It's not easy to see this," Chloe said softly when she noticed Leo's hands clenched into fists. "Even for me, who studies death every day, it's different when you know the person." "She was all I had," Leo replied, his voice lower than usual. "My father died when I was a child. Donna Elena taught me everything, how to lead, how to survive, how to never show weakness, even how to love in her own way." It was the first time he had spoken about personal feelings with someone outside the family, and Chloe felt the weight of the trust being placed in her. "She must have been an extraordinary woman to raise a son like you." Leo looked at her, surprised. "A son like me? What does that mean?" "Someone who interrupts his own mother's funeral to seek justice, who isn't intimidated by traditions or conveniences when the truth is at stake." Chloe hesitated before continuing. "My mother told me that Donna Elena was demanding but fair. She never humiliated her staff, always paid on time, gave Christmas gifts. For a woman in her position, that meant a lot." The autopsy result confirmed all of Chloe's suspicions. Donna Elena had been poisoned with a rare substance that mimicked the symptoms of a heart attack. The poison had been administered in small doses over several weeks, a sophisticated method that required medical knowledge and constant access to the victim. The discovery changed everything. Leo left the OCME a transformed man. The pain of loss had crystallized into something more dangerous, a cold, calculated thirst for revenge. But there was also a genuine gratitude for Chloe, who had risked everything to reveal the truth. When he offered to take her home, she hesitated. "I don't know if it's a good idea for you to know where I live," she said, biting her lower lip nervously. "Why not?" "Because after today, our worlds will go back to what they've always been. You'll handle this with your family, the way families like yours handle problems, and I'll go back to my studies, my normal life." Chloe looked out the car window. "It's better this way." "And what if I don't want it to be that way?" The question escaped Leo before he could think it through. There was something about Chloe that attracted him beyond gratitude. Her intelligence, her courage, the way she treated him like an ordinary man instead of a powerful figure. "Then you're making a mistake," Chloe replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "People like us don't mix. It doesn't work out." "People like us? You know what I mean." She finally faced him. "You live in a mansion that's worth more than everything my family has ever owned in 3 generations. I share a 2-room apartment with my diabetic grandmother and work night shifts to pay for college." Leo remained silent for a long moment, processing her words. There was a truth there he couldn't deny, but there was also something more, an attraction that defied any social or economic logic. 3 weeks after the autopsy, Chloe discovered her life had become a silent battlefield. The university questioned her constant absences. Her academic advisor asked uncomfortable questions about her new contacts, and her grandmother lived in a state of permanent anxiety since neighbors started commenting on expensive cars parking in front of their building. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about Leo and the investigation that had become a mutual obsession. Leo, for his part, faced growing resistance within his own family. Victor Rousseau, married to his younger sister Isabella, had been particularly vocal about the inappropriate influence an outsider was having on family decisions. During a tense meeting in the main company office, Victor didn't mince words. "You're letting a girl from the ghetto dictate how we conduct our business," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Donna Elena must be rolling in her grave to see her grandson being manipulated by someone who clearly has ulterior motives." Leo stared at him with the coldness he reserved for declared enemies. "Watch your words, Victor. The girl from the ghetto discovered my mother was murdered when you were all willing to bury the truth along with her. And what has that changed? Victor retorted. We know she was killed, so what? Are you going to resurrect her, or are you going to keep playing detective with your new little friend? The tension in the room was palpable. Anthony tried to mediate, suggesting it might be time to end this investigation and focus on the future of the company, but Leo had already made his decision. He would hire private investigators, use every available resource to find out who killed his mother, and Chloe would remain involved because she was the only person he completely trusted in this matter. That same night, Leo showed up at Chloe's apartment in the Bronx. She was studying at the kitchen table when she heard the insistent honking downstairs. Looking out the window, she saw the black Mercedes parked among the beat-up sedans and motorcycles that dominated the landscape. Some neighbors were already crowding their windows, clearly intrigued. "You can't just show up here like this," was the first thing she said when she went down to meet him. "We need to talk, something important." Leo studied her face under the yellowish light of the lamppost. "Can I come up?" Chloe looked around, noticing the curious stares multiplying. 3 minutes, my grandmother's sleeping. The apartment was even smaller than Leo had imagined. 2 connected rooms, simple but immaculate furniture, photographs in cheap frames but arranged with care. It smelled of disinfectant and the soft perfume he now associated with Chloe. On the kitchen table, forensic medicine textbooks were mixed with medical prescriptions and bills to be paid. "We found something," Leo said without preamble. The investigators traced the origin of the poison. It came from a lab in Colombia, illegally imported through a front company. Only 3 people in the United States had access to this substance in the last 6 months. Chloe leaned forward, temporarily forgetting where they were. Who? A researcher from the NIH who died in a car accident 2 weeks ago, a private doctor in DC whose whereabouts are unknown, and... Leo hesitated, and my mother's private nurse, Carmen Ortiz. The name hit Chloe like a punch. Carmen had worked for Donna Elena for the past 2 years, a kind woman in her 50s who had always been praised for her dedication and competence. Carmen wouldn't do that. She adored your mother. "Everyone has a price," Leo replied bitterly. "We found out she deposited $200,000 into a secret account 3 days before my mother's death. The money came from a shell company registered in Victor's name. The revelation left Chloe speechless. Victor, the brother-in-law, who had always seemed ambitious but harmless, who kissed Donna Elena's hand at family gatherings and called Leo my dear brother-in-law in front of everyone. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "The evidence is solid. Victor orchestrated everything, the poison, the bribe to the nurse, even the timing. He waited until my mother was most fragile after her heart surgery to start the gradual poisoning." Leo clenched his fists. He wanted me to look weak, indecisive. He planned to question my leadership on the company board, claiming I didn't have the coldness needed to run the business. Chloe processed the information, her medical training automatically organizing the facts. And the nurse. Where is she now? Disappeared. She resigned by phone the morning after my mother's death, said she was going to visit relatives upstate. No one can find her. The silence that followed was broken by a low groan from the next room. Chloe stood up quickly, whispering an apology before going to check on her grandmother. Leo was left alone in the tiny kitchen, observing the details of Chloe's life. A calendar on the wall marking work shifts, a photo of her at her high school graduation, a bottle of diabetes medication with her grandmother's name on it. When she returned, there was something different in her posture, more determined, more focused. "What are you going to do about Victor?" she asked directly. "I haven't decided yet. Confronting him without more evidence would be dangerous. He could destroy evidence, silence witnesses." Leo hesitated. "Or he could do something to you." The concern in his voice surprised her. To me? Why me? Because you discovered the truth. Because you're helping me. Because... Leo stopped, realizing he was about to reveal feelings he didn't even fully understand himself. Because... He looked into her eyes, seeing his own vulnerability reflected there. Because you've become important to me, more important than you should be. The air between them crackled with a different kind of tension. Chloe felt her heart race, not from the danger of the investigation, but from the intensity of Leo's gaze. For weeks, she had been fighting an attraction that defied all logic, trying to convince herself it was just adrenaline, just the excitement of being involved in something bigger than her ordinary life. "Leo," she began, but he moved closer, closing the distance between them to a few inches. "I know it's crazy," he said softly. "I know we're from different worlds, that this shouldn't be happening, but I can't stop thinking about you." The raw honesty in his voice broke down Chloe's last defenses. "Me too," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The first kiss happened right there, in the cramped kitchen that smelled of disinfectant between medical books and unpaid bills. It was hesitant at first, as if they were both testing unknown waters, then it intensified with an urgency that spoke of weeks of accumulated tension. Leo pressed her gently against the wall, his hands finding her face, while Chloe allowed herself to feel for the first time what she had been denying for so long. When they broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. Reality gradually returned. The tiny apartment, the dangerous investigation, the incompatible worlds they came from. "This is too dangerous," Chloe whispered. But her hands were still resting on his chest. "Everything in my life is dangerous," Leo replied. "But this, you're worth any risk." It was then that Leo's phone rang, shrill in the quiet apartment. He hesitated before answering, but the urgency of the ring made him reconsider. On the other end of the line, the tense voice of his head of security brought news that changed everything. "Mr. Castellano, we found Carmen Ortiz. She's at Bellevue Hospital, admitted in serious condition. Apparently, she tried to commit suicide by taking the same poison she used on Donna Elena, and, sir, she left a written confession." Leo hung up the phone, his hands trembling slightly. Chloe watched him, already knowing from his expression that something fundamental had changed. "We're going to the hospital," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Now." "Leo, my grandmother. Bring her too. From now on, you two are under my protection. If Victor finds out Carmen is alive and can testify against him..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Chloe looked around the apartment that was her safe world, knowing instinctively that when she left it that night, nothing would ever be the same again. She was crossing an invisible line, and on the other side waited a man who could either destroy her or save her, but who would definitely change her forever. Bellevue Hospital was quiet in the early morning hours when Leo, Chloe, and her grandmother arrived, escorted by 3 cars of security guards. Carmen Ortiz was in the ICU, connected to machines monitoring her vital signs as she fought against the same poison she had administered to Donna Elena. The irony of the situation was not lost on any of them. The nurse who killed, trying to kill herself with the same weapon. Dr. Henry Campos, the doctor on duty, handed Leo a crumpled, tear-stained letter that Carmen had left on the nightstand of her boarding house room. With trembling hands, Leo opened the paper while Chloe read over his shoulder, both absorbing every word of the confession that would change everything. "I couldn't live with the guilt anymore. Mr. Victor promised me it would be quick, that she wouldn't suffer, that she would just fall asleep and not wake up. He said Donna Elena was suffering with age, that it would be an act of mercy. He lied to me. She suffered in the last few weeks, asking why she felt so weak, why her heart was failing. I killed her slowly and she trusted me to the end. The money isn't worth a life, especially not the life of a woman who treated me like a daughter. I ask for forgiveness from God and from Mr. Castellano. Victor threatened me today, said if I told anyone, my 5-year-old granddaughter would have an accident. I can't live knowing I put a child in danger for my greed. Leo crumpled the letter in his fingers, his heavy breathing echoing in the empty hospital corridor. Chloe touched his arm gently, feeling the tension radiating from his body like heat from a furnace. Carmen's confession confirmed everything they suspected, but it also revealed how far Victor was willing to go to protect his secrets. "We have to get her out of here," Leo said, his voice low but filled with urgency. "If Victor finds out she's alive, he'll try to finish what she started." Dr. Campos hesitated. "Mr. Castellano, the patient is in critical condition. Moving her now would be extremely risky." "Leaving her here would be fatal," Leo retorted. "Do you have any trusted private clinic? A discreet place where she can recover under protection?" Chloe intervened, her medical mind quickly processing the options. "I know a place. Dr. Evans has a small clinic in Greenwich Village. He handles delicate cases that need discretion. He owes me a few favors." While they arranged Carmen's transfer, Chloe's grandmother, Connie, watched everything with a mixture of fascination and concern. At 74, she had seen many things in her life, but she never imagined her granddaughter would get involved with a family like the Castellanos. During the drive to the clinic, she took Chloe's hand and whispered, "Honey, are you sure about what you're doing?" "No, Grandma, I'm not sure about anything," Chloe answered honestly. "But I can't go back now." Leo overheard the whispered conversation and felt a pang of guilt. He was dragging Chloe into his world of violence and danger, endangering not only her, but also her elderly grandmother. Yet, the thought of losing her now that he had discovered feelings he didn't even know he had was unbearable. Dr. Evans' clinic was small but well-equipped, discreet enough to go unnoticed, but with resources for intensive care. When Carmen was transferred to a private room, Leo posted 2 of his most trusted security guards at the entrance, instructing them not to allow any visitors who weren't personally pre-authorized by him. It was almost dawn when Leo finally had a moment alone with Chloe. They were in the clinic's small garden, the cool New York morning air offering a welcome relief from the tension of the last few hours. "I'm going to confront Victor today," Leo said, watching the horizon begin to lighten. "With Carmen's confession, I have enough evidence to destroy him. And then he'll try to kill me before I destroy him." The coldness in Leo's voice made Chloe shiver. "That's how these things work in my world." Chloe turned to face him fully. "And what if you don't survive?" "If I don't survive, you take this confession and go straight to the feds. I have contacts there who can't be bought." Leo took her hands in his. "Promise me you'll do that, Leo." "Promise," he insisted. "Carmen risked everything to reveal the truth. I can't let that sacrifice be in vain." Chloe nodded, even though she knew she could never simply turn Leo over to the justice system if something happened to him. She had fallen in love with a man whose world was governed by rules she barely understood, but whose honor and loyalty were unquestionable. The confrontation took place in the company office during a board meeting that Leo had specially convened for the occasion. Victor arrived confidently, believing he had eliminated all evidence against him. When Leo placed Carmen's confession on the table, the blood drained from his brother-in-law's face. "It's a fake," Victor tried to bluff. "A disturbed woman trying to get revenge for something." "Carmen is alive, Victor, and she's willing to testify." Leo stood up slowly, his presence dominating the room. "You killed my mother out of greed. You killed the woman who welcomed you as a son when you married Isabella." Victor looked around the room, realizing he was completely alone. The other board members stared at him with horror and disgust. Anthony, who had always supported him, had visibly distanced himself. "You can't prove anything," Victor said, but his voice no longer had the same conviction. "I can and I will." Leo opened a folder with bank documents, photographs, and investigators' reports. Transfers to Carmen's account, the purchase of the poison through your shell company, even recordings of your conversations threatening witnesses. It was then that Victor realized he was completely lost. His hand moved instinctively to the gun he carried in his vest, but Leo was prepared. The sound of gunshots echoed through the meeting room, rattling the windows and sending the other board members diving to the floor for cover. When the dust settled, Victor was on the ground, a blood stain spreading across the room's Persian rug. Leo remained standing, his gun still in hand, his breathing controlled despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Call an ambulance," he ordered calmly, "and the police." Hours later, when Chloe arrived at the office after being called by Leo, she found a scene that seemed straight out of a movie. Victor had been taken to the hospital in serious condition, but alive enough to be arrested as soon as he recovered. Carmen's confession, combined with all the collected evidence, would ensure his conviction. Leo was in his private office, looking out the panoramic window that overlooked downtown Manhattan. When Chloe entered, he turned with an expression that mixed relief and exhaustion. "It's over," he said simply. Chloe approached, noticing the bloodstains on his shirt, the deep weariness in his eyes. "And now?" "Now we rebuild. The company, the family, our life." Leo hesitated. "If you want a life with me, D." The proposal hung in the air between them, laden with all the complications they both knew so well. Chloe thought of her grandmother, her studies, the simple life she had always known. Then she thought of the man who had risked everything to get justice for his mother, who had protected her even when it complicated his own plans. "I do," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice, "but on my terms." Leo smiled for the first time in days. "Name them." "First, I continue my studies. I will graduate and work as a medical examiner. I won't just be Leo Castellano's wife." Chloe counted on her fingers. "Second, my grandmother comes with us wherever we go. She's family. Third, you will completely legitimize the company's business. No more gray areas. And if I agree to all that, then—" Chloe moved closer to him, placing her hands on his chest. "Then we build something new, something your mother would approve of." The kiss that sealed the deal was different from the previous ones. It didn't carry the weight of urgency or danger, but the promise of a future built on solid foundations. When they separated, Leo knew his life had changed completely. He was no longer just the heir to a dark empire, but the man who had chosen love over power, truth over convenience. 6 months later, in the same St. Patrick's Cathedral where it all began, Leo and Chloe were married in a simple ceremony, with only their closest friends and Connie in the front row, proud of the granddaughter who had found love without losing her dignity. Carmen, recovered and in witness protection, sent a congratulatory letter from her new home upstate, where she was rebuilding her life away from the ghosts of the past. The Castellano Corporation underwent a complete transformation, becoming a model of transparency in the construction industry. Leo used his influence to create social programs that benefited underprivileged communities, honoring Donna Elena's memory in a way she could have never imagined. Chloe graduated with top honors and became one of the most respected medical examiners in New York, specializing in cases involving domestic violence and suspicious deaths. Together, they proved that true love can overcome any social difference as long as it's built on mutual respect, honesty, and the courage to fight for what is right. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10. and thank you very much.